And yeah, this is going to be my second talk. The organizers kindly asked me if I could talk about two topics, so this is going to be the second one. And it's from call from permanent to contract. How many of you guys here are working as contractors or freelancers? One, two, okay. If not, I guess the contractors don't care because they already know what to do, right? Well, I'm in Twitter. There was a time I used to ask questions on Monday. I call them Monday poll. And one of the questions I asked was who was working as a permanent employee or as a contractor freelancer with your own company or, well, which kind of work situation you had. And that was the result. Pretty much 2/3 of the people that vote for in this non-scientific poll. They vote for permanent. Well, that's my ego slide, but I think most of you have been in the previous talk, or we have talked. I'm a freelance dev from Spain, part of the Google Developer Expert crew, as that this is my my Twitter handle. So, well, I would like you to tell you my story, how I started being an employee, and well, at some point I moved into being a freelancer and having my own company. How did I transition, and the problems I had, the things I had to learn, and the entire story. So that goes back to 2015. At that time, I was 30 years old, and you know when you're 30 years old, you have a crisis, always. It's, it's something associated with that time. I was working at a company in Germany, and things were good. I was getting a good salary. I got promoted. At that point, I had a team of 5 developers I was leading, and I was doing what I wanted. I was being a developer almost full-time, working with Android, backend, and doing some management part with my team. But this crisis came, and I started thinking, like, okay, things are cool, but you know, pretty much everything is written on a book. I know I will work 2 more years, and after 2 years, I will get another promotion if I'm good. I know what my salary was going to be, etc. So I felt I was in a track that I could not move out. And well, at the company I was working at, they have this funny thing as well, where well, you know, I was a senior manager at that time. In 2 years, I would be an executive manager. Everybody was a manager. In fact, I started to work with a person that just graduated from the university, and this person was a junior manager. So if everybody's a manager, I don't know. I don't know what are the programmers. Anyway, I started talking with a friend. He was from Australia. He was a contractor there, and started telling me things about. He just joined the company, but told me, yeah, when I was in Australia, I was working as a freelancer, and well, I was learning a lot. It was much more flexible. I was able to switch teams and to switch technologies, and well, of course, the money was better. It was much more freedom, and I started thinking a lot on my free time, and I found myself sometimes in the evening Googling on my computer like advantages of contractor, freelancer lifestyle, etc. And well, it took my interest at some point. I was feeling a little bit like this at my company. Well, like working on a particular time, and I could not really do much more things because it's Germany also. Everything is very like, you know, little squares. And they also said this thing like, yeah, you have flexible time. You can work from 8 to 10 in the morning, which is not flexible. You know, flexible is like, I want to work at 6 o'clock because I'm a morning person, for example. And yeah, it was like an entire system that didn't let me, or I felt there was not a lot of flexibility. If you don't know these, do you guys know those designs here? It's from a book called Remote that I will show you later, and has a lot of connection with being a freelancer, actually. Anyway, I felt that the system was really like put in a direction, and it was hard to get away from this corporative lifestyle. So I was at some point talking with my boss and asked him, I would like to take some time off to go out traveling and decide what I want to do. If I want to keep being at the company or what I want to change, what I want to do, whatever. And well, my boss was very supportive, but my boss had a boss that had a boss that had a boss. I think at some point there was a meta boss or a person that was very important. And well, he asked, and it took some time. I think maybe like a couple of weeks that I decided to go on holidays. And I went to Israel, which is, if you haven't been there, it's an amazing country. They have I was attending a conference, and I think the the Israeli people have this entrepreneurial mindset where they really create a lot of startups. And well, when I came back from these holidays, I came pretty much with the idea of quitting whatever my boss said. So he said, I've been talking, and it's not going to be possible for you sabbatical time. So I handed like my resignation immediately, and he was also like, no, wait, etc. But I just decided that was the way to go. And I felt a little bit like this. It was the first time in my life I was not having any job. I quit without any clear offer. To Google this, by the way, I Googled for jumping without parachute, and there are surprisingly many results on Google. It's apparently a sport that many people like, to jump without a parachute and grab each other on the air or grab the parachute. I don't know if you guys know Charles Darwin. He would be surprised with this if he would have been living today. Well, anyway, it felt a little bit like, I don't have a job. I have savings for 6 months in Munich, where I live, which is an expensive city. Probably I could go into a scarcity mode and make it up to 1 year, but felt a little bit uncomfortable at that time. And now I think it was a good feeling to have, because that pushed me from moving into this corporate mindset into, well, you need to find a job because you have a house and things you have to pay, etc. Well, it turned out it worked out pretty well. I started, well, when this happens, I guess you start talking with your network, you talk with friends, you ask them that you're looking for a new job, you maybe contact another recruiters, etc. In the span of 1 week, I lined up a few interviews. In the second week, I made a few of them, and by the third week, I took the decision of joining a company as a freelancer, as a contractor. Well, right now I have my own company, based in the UK. I live in Germany, but I taxate everything through this company, and I think the point of quitting my job pushes me into this direction. Now I want to talk with you about a few points that you need to consider if you need to make, or if you're thinking of making this jump. When you're an employee, basically the company manages everything for you, right? They pay you, they give you a paycheck every month. They take care of your taxes. They take care of or mostly they take care of your taxes. Health insurance depends a little bit from country to country, but it's overall this situation. And when you start freelancing or contracting, you need to take care of those things. There are 3 main figures that you can follow to start contracting. One of them would be being a freelancer, where you are an individual that provides a service to a company. You don't have any relationship with them, therefore no social benefits. The next option would be to have a limited company, where you open an entity, an economical entity that is not you, it's independent. Basically, depends on the legislation, but this company would hire you as a director or developer, or probably like a combination of everything. And this company offers a service to another companies, which has a few advantages, not only in terms of taxation, but in terms of expanding and working in another countries. And as a comparison, in Germany, if you work I know the case of Germany, this changes from country to country. In Germany, as a freelancer, you pay more or less 35% of taxes. With a limited company, you pay around 20% of taxes. So it's also much more comfortable if you want to pay less taxes. It's also easier to expand, because with a company, you can hire other people. As a freelancer, you cannot make this kind of contracts. And as it works, the company hires you, and if you have, at the end of the year, a benefit, let's say $1 million to make it round, you send a dividend to yourself as the only owner of this company, and pay 20% over the dividends. So it's obviously you're saving here some money. The third option would be to have an umbrella company. This is basically a company that is taking care of all your paperwork, is taking care of all your taxes. If you have your own company, you have to do it by yourself, which can be quite time-consuming. Or you can hire an advisor that will take care of all the taxes for you. An umbrella just does everything. They give their commission, they're part of the cake, and you don't have to worry about absolutely anything. So that's something that, well, obviously depends on the situation you are, the amount of energy you're able to put. I think as a general rule, it's a good idea to focus on what you're good at. I'm not sure if I'm a good programmer, but I'm a terrible tax person, so I have my own advisor that takes care of everything, and I can focus on programming. Some people might have more time or have the resources to invest it here. That's always a personal decision you have to take. I was trying to find some statistics, and it's harder to find them for Ukraine, and mainly because I don't speak Ukraine, I guess, and yeah. So it's easier to find them in for the UK or US, but I think this applies in general for many countries. So in the UK, it has been growing for a while, the amount of people that are self-employed and have their own company. And I think this is a general, now with all this IT booming, is happening in many other countries. Skills you develop when you have your own company or when you start taking care of your own business. Those are called soft skills. I define soft skills as the skills you don't learn at the university or at the academy. You have to learn them, but by failing very often. So yeah, I guess nobody teaches you at the university how to speak publicly or how to make sales or how to make pitching. That's something that you need to go, get embarrassed 5, 10 times until you get a little bit better. I have found myself that, well, as a developer, we are problem solvers, but you learn to solve a different types of problems. For example, I was working with an American company, and when I had to make them the offer, then there came all these things that they need to pay taxes in the States. When they send me the bill, I have to do a few things, and for me, it requires some time because my tax advisor didn't know how to do this either. So it forces you to go into different fields that you've never been as a developer. Networking, when you have your own company or you're a freelancer, obviously you don't have a company that gives you something to do at the end of the month. You need to find your own gigs. You need to go and talk with people that have the gigs and the jobs, and they want to hire you, trying to understand them, so you get much better at this interpersonal communication. It's a little bit connecting with sales as well. I was always terrible at making sales and this kind of negotiation. When I was at my company, the company I was working for, I have a budget, but if I needed more budget, I could go to my boss, and we were more or less in the same team, so we wanted to vote to success. It's different when you talk with a different company and you're trying to negotiate the budget for the project you're going to make them, or the amount of money we need, etc. Organizational skills. It generally works when you have your own company or you're working as a freelancer. It's not uncommon to have 2 or 3 projects at the same time. Some of them part-time, but it's not. In my case, at least, have never been like only one client for a long time. This obviously is not the 9 to 5 that you have at a company. You need to start thinking a little bit, okay, how do I make this more programmatic and efficient so I can keep every client happy, I can keep delivering, I can keep talking with them and taking the requirements, etc. In general, has been an increase, at least for me, into another skills that I didn't have before when I was only a developer or a manager. And there are more things to consider as well. One of the things that I'm, for example, now enjoying a lot, you know, if you are working for when you work as an employee and you get into 65, you get this thing called retirement, where the government pays you some money at the end of the month so you can live more or less properly until you die. When you have your own company or you're a freelancer, this doesn't happen. You don't have a retirement. And this also requires you to change a little bit your mindset. You need to think, okay, do I need to hire a private plan, which is a bad idea for a few things like taxation. You cannot take this money out until you're 65, and maybe you want to retire earlier, or maybe you have an emergency. So one practice or something that many individuals come into doing is investing. That's something I never knew before, and I started checking it since I started with my own company. And it has helped me as well to understand a lot how the world is working, and understanding a little bit the motivation some people could have to work harder, invest, getting this 8% of the stock market that on average it grows every year. So I think actually, like, if we could teach in schools economy and how to invest, the world would be much better, because I guess not many people, how many people here are actively investing or checking? Okay. Bitcoins or? Yeah, okay. But that's gambling, that's not investing. Yeah. Well, it has been gambling for the last 10 years, but it has been always like up, right? So. Yeah, I think I have bought a few, but I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, it was like 300, and I'm like, you have to be crazy to invest here, and now it's like 8,000. So. Well, anyway, the thing, if you invest in stock options in the market, it grows on average 8% every year. Some years can go like 20% down, some other years 25%, but on average they grow. It's in fact much safer than leaving the money on the bank, because the money on the bank just loses every year 2% or the amount of inflation. And well, that's something you need to think. I didn't have this preoccupation in my mind when I was working for a company, because I was like, I can work until I'm 65 and then I will have this. But it's something that puts you also into this scarcity mode, where you have to think and you have to read, and learning a new skill is always very good, especially when it comes to money, because if there is something sure for everybody, is that we are going to deal with money. That's something we all have to do, unless you're living in, I don't know, in an island. This is some examples of investment. I'm focusing myself into stocks right now. Depends on the strategy you follow. That might change. Some people prefer doing it on real estate or bonds. Bonds give you, a bond is basically the money a government or a company get lent, and they promise you to return within some years with a few percent, but it's generally on the order of 3-4% per year, which is slightly over inflation, but is not that much if you really want to create your own wealth soon. Well, coming back to the topic of contracting and working for a company. Depends on the country again. You should check your rates, and it's probably not the same in Ukraine as it is in Germany, for example. This is an example for London, is the average. And as you can see here, it's almost double. So when you're contracting, it's easy to multiply per 2 or per 3 times the amount of money you could get as a permanent employee. I don't think this is the only reason, and in fact, if you're only moving into contracting because you want more money, it's a terrible idea. There are more things that you should consider. Money is good. I think also as a permanent employee, developers are not being hungry either. But yeah, it's also something worth to mention. I remember when I was at the university, there was this huge thing with databases and people working optimizing databases and making good money, and teachers were recommending like, oh, you can go and optimize SQL routines and getting good money. And I'm like, that would be like, I don't know. It's yeah, probably not as good as developing with mobile, for example, or, well, just a comparison of salaries. I Googled that, and one of the cool things working, when you start working as a contractor, is that it's easier to work with companies in another country. Let's think about the United States. Is there any American here? Okay. So if you guys know, in the United States is a country well known for having very good conditions for developers, but it's hard to get in, right? They have basically this visa that is a lottery, 30% of possibilities of entering. So if you get rejected, you have to keep trying, and it's expensive for the company, it's bad for you, creates expectations, and it leads to a place that generally people don't want to be. I don't know how is the situation for Ukrainians. If you want to go to Europe, you need probably a special visa as well, right, to work there, which I guess also takes time. And excuse me? Than the States, definitely. Yeah, the States is crazy. Well, I think if you work for a company, you can apply for, but you know, it's always problems. It's not like. If you have your own company or you're a freelancer, you get rid of all these difficulties. You can send a bill to an American company because they are not employing you. You don't need to be supported by visa. You just extend the bill, they pay you, and you can be working remotely from your home country. And that takes you into interesting points in terms of compensation. This is the average salary I found in Ukraine. Not sure how, it's probably only average, but yeah. 23,000 a year, the median. The median in Germany would be 47,000 a year. The median in the States is 69,000 a year. So you see, if you could adopt this strategy, you can start looking for clients that are located in other countries where the conditions would be much better than in your own home country. I've been actually traveling a lot and met even crazy people that they moved to Cambodia or to Thailand or to Vietnam, and they still keep working for their American companies or German companies. And in Vietnam, for example, you need around $1,000 to have a really nice life quality. So it can increase your life quality a lot. That takes me to the point of working remotely. I think it's strictly connected with contracting, and it makes it much easier than working for if you're working for one company. Anybody here works remotely? You both, okay. Yeah, so this is poll from Stack Overflow. You know, every year they make a poll asking the technologies you use, your profile, etc. And roughly 30%, one-third of the people have some kind of frequent remote work. Not a few days each month, but like properly working from home. There is no Bible, no fixed rule here. Some people work as nomads. That means they never go to the office. Some people might go once a month, once a semester. That's always something you need to talk with your client. Before, when I was working for my company, I could barely travel because, you know, holidays are like, I think 26 days a year. Remote was not allowed. You had some budget for conferences, but you could not be traveling the entire day. So last year, I was actually traveling the world, and those are the countries I visit. I think in total was around 80-something flights I took, or that's what Foursquare told me. And that's something that I could have never done if I would be working for a company in the same office, because, well, basically you don't have time to take all those flights and etc. If each person has its own motivation, I know for some people it's more important if you have a family to stay home, homeschooling your kids or taking care of them. For other people, might be traveling. So the final thing is that you have more flexibility. A few tools I use. Well, I think that's a very important choice you need to make, and you need to start mastering some of the tools that are available. Hangouts, Skype, you might use Telegram, WhatsApp to keep talking. One of the things I do as a developer, and I try to advocate for that, especially when working remotely, is to make a pairing. That means sitting together with another person, trying to learn from each other, trying to code together, see how is their process to solve problems, etc. But of course, if you're traveling, you need some kind of tools. You cannot sit together because you are not in the same place. For me, the Team Viewer and Screen Hero has worked pretty well. I try to make it with my clients, and I actively advocate for this at least one day. I have found that doing it on Friday, which is maybe not the most productive day of the week, helps, because it's a little bit more relaxed. You know, you're not going to make any release, so you can use that time to learn from the people you're working with. And to me, has given a lot of benefits. Also, we talked before about organization. I particularly like Trello a lot. You probably know it, guys. It has an offline mode that is really cool. On the phone, especially if you're traveling, I have my own board on Trello where I can move my cards if I'm working on a plane. In a long trip, for example, to Asia, there is no internet all the time. So yeah, the thing is that I think you need to get to know those tools very well, especially as a contractor more than a permanent employee. One thing that I started doing also recently is to track my time. There are a few, this application is called TimeSpot. You have a few of them, a few extensions for Chrome that track exactly what you're doing with the computer. Here you can see that, well, I've been working with Android Studio for this time, Google Chrome, the emulator of Android Studio. You can see the peak times where you use each software. You can even categorize them and see if you're spending more time on development than social media, etc. And an interesting thing, when I started contracting and working from home, there was this imposter syndrome. I was thinking, maybe I'm not working enough. Maybe my client will think that because I'm Spanish, I'm having a siesta or something like that. And I realized that I work more at the beginning that I was working when I was permanent employee, maybe because you have this security that you can take things a little bit more for granted. But yeah, I think we all suffer these things when we started working from home or as a freelancer, that you need to get more into the code and prove a little bit more, and that's not necessary. I think it takes some time to learn it, but it's cool to focus on your 8 hours, 6 hours, whatever amount you're putting every day. Well, there might be some reasons for switching. If you are thinking of jumping, they are always personal. The same reasons doesn't apply for everybody. I want to go through some of the positive points and some of the negative points. As I see it, positive points of jumping into contracting is the earnings. They basically double or triple. Should not be your only, as I said, your only reason. That's a good one, but should not be the main one. Variety, since I've been freelancing, or before freelancing, I was developing with Android and a little bit of backend. Since then, I've done Android, iOS, JavaScript, machine learning, TensorFlow. I've been working with JavaScript on the front end, a lot of backend development. Because sometimes you get these small gigs, and if you have time, you just get them. That's something that doesn't happen as an employee. So I think you learn, the learning curve gets much more pronunciated. You can learn much more things when doing this kind of job. More flexibility in terms of holidays, in terms of work. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm gonna take this summer a little bit more quiet, so I will work only 4 hours, or now I really want to learn Kotlin, which is my situation now. I'm taking a lot of things regarding to Kotlin, so I can speed it up and participate more and get more into the language. If you're at a company, basically you get your job, and it's easier to, it's difficult to move into another position. There are less politics. I was not good at politics at my previous company, because there was always like, you know, these fights between departments and the people that like another people and not another. So I tried always to get away. That sometimes is not easy. Sometimes you have to be a part of that because it's your daily job. I think this is it doesn't fully disappear, but as a contractor, it gets better. You don't have to deal with these politics every day, much less. Still, sometimes they're required because we are humans and we end up in a human environment, but it gets much better. There is more life and work balance as well, or at least the option of having that. You can always take more gigs and work more. For me personally, it has been the balance, the final balance is much better. I can go traveling if I want. I can go to see my family in Spain or my girlfriend in Japan or wherever I want. And it's much easier to organize this. Knowledge, that probably goes with variety. People can learn much more. You get into different technology stacks, you get into different projects. The CV you can build within years, being a contractor is impressive if you work in different projects and stacks. And of course, it's easier to grow a business. If you already have your company and you need to hire another person, because that's something that eventually can happen. A company contacts you, we want to develop this product, we need more people, you can always hire a person. If the company is already set up, you don't need to go through the process of starting it and making all the economical things required. There are also some bad parts. There is less stability. Basically, you have to be job hunting every 6 months, which can be a little bit stressful. I like the part of forcing yourself out of the comfort zone, but I understand for some people just want to focus on another thing. That's always a personal decision. Skills and development. When you're working at a company, the company is the one taking care of you, taking care of making courses for you and sending you to another place to learn a new technology. As a freelancer, that's something that you have to do by yourself. You need to pay your courses, you need to do it on your free time, and yeah. Holidays, obviously when you take on holidays, it's not the money you spend going on holidays, it's also the money you spend by not working and you stop earning. So count 1 month of holidays as essentially 2 months of losing money. It's more flexible, but yeah, that's something that when you're working for a company, you realize, 1 week to the beach, I don't care. And when you're a freelancer, you might go to the with the laptop to the beach to avoid not working. You spend more time on the business. There is obviously a part of taxes and stuff that even if you have an advisor, you need to deal with, and this is at the end more time consuming. You're also your own marketing person. You might be performing another tasks that are not directly related to programming. Something that it didn't happen to me. I've been doing this for 2.5 years, but I've known some people that during this web crisis in the 2000s, they told me that they spent a few months without finding a job, because at that time the economy was not so good, and it's not something that we expected to happen, but if that happens, the contractors are the ones suffering this first. A person that has a permanent job, they don't have to suffer. The company always can close and kick you out, but it will happen first with freelancers. You have, in theory, less protection. And of course, there are no social benefits. Generally, you have to take care of your retirement, your social insurance, etc. Then, the next step would be to evaluate your skills. What are you good at? When a company is hiring you as a freelancer, they are looking for a particular set of skills that you have. When you have a permanent employee, it's okay if they are not huge experts in something, and you also assume that they will spend some years with you. So you will train them. If they are not experts, it's perfectly fine. But as a contractor, you need to claim your area of expertise. So before you start doing the jam, you have to think for yourself. What am I good at? Am I good at Android development? Do I know a lot of Kotlin development? Can I do good things with backend, etc.? And focusing on this specialization to solve your skill. The next step would be looking for contracts. Well, you can do it through, I found this graph on the internet. Some people do it through recruiters. I guess most of the people do it through friends or people you have already met. You always go through your social network and ask, okay, I'm a developer, can I work with you, etc. Conferences or meetups, networking events is also easy to find people that are working for developers. There is a huge demand. I think the recruiters is a necessary evil. You need them sometimes, but there is one thing to mention when you're working as a recruiter, as a contractor. As a permanent employee, if the company hires you through a recruiter, the recruiter gets a percentage based on your salary. That's like 20%, 50%, whatever. When you're working as a contractor, it's generally a little bit different. The company hiring gives a budget to the recruiter, like we can pay 600 pounds a day, and they use this to leverage. So it's on their interest to make your salary as low as possible, because the rest is the money they're actually earning. So that's something you need to learn when dealing with recruiters as a contractor. There are a few websites, you probably know Upwork, Fiverr, and Freelancer. I absolutely recommend them to start, because in those places you negotiate by price and not by quality. So there will be, you know how it works. You place a bid, and you say like, I can do this for you for 1,000, and there is another guy coming from wherever, and I can do this for 500. And that's probably a place where you don't want to be. I think you should focus on quality, and this is my field. I'm an expert. I will help you grow your business, but I'm not going to be like dealing with you for less money, because it doesn't lead to an interesting place. It takes us to the next place, establishing your worth. You need to know, I was a little bit lost at the beginning when I started contracting, because I didn't have any idea of how much I was worth. And talking with recruiters, there was only this game, like we only have this amount per hour or per day. And then I knew that they were obviously offering me much less than they were getting, because they wanted their part of the cake. I think everybody should be open about salaries. We would end up with many things like discrimination to women generally are not as well paid as men. There are minorities that get also less money. So it's probably to establish your worth. It's good to attend events and talk with contractors already established. I think a senior person would probably be open to talk with you about the money they're making and help you and guide you a little bit. And the next step would be handing the notice. To me, it helped me a lot. Now I see it in backwards, and I think it was very positive to do it without a job, to quit and then trying to find a job. Also, I have to say that in Germany, the handing notice period is 3 months, which is an eternity. I think in the UK it's 1 month, right? Spain, 2 weeks. I don't know how much is in Ukraine. 2 weeks as well. Yeah. So that might be like Lido, because you have 2 weeks to find the job. That's something you have to consider locally. In Germany, I know like in 3 months, maybe I can like, I don't know, I can get married or. And always consider the local circumstances. Everything I'm telling you is based on my experience as a Spaniard living in Germany, working mainly with German and American companies, but might be different for an American, for example. You know, the Americans are one of the few people in this world that wherever they live, they have to pay taxes in the United States. And there are a few local laws and circumstances that you might need to consider. Last not least, I would like to give you a few resources that help me a little bit in this road of freelancing and, well, starting doing things a little bit different. This first book is called Rejection Proof. It's a Chinese guy that he was in a similar situation. He was actually her wife was going to have a kid, and he was a little bit having this crisis of the 30s, and he wanted to quit his job, but is this the right moment? Because now we're going to have a kid and we need the money. So he set for himself an experiment. And he said, I'm going to get rejected for 100 days on a row. So he started the first day by going to a policeman in the States and said, hey, can you give me $100? The policeman obviously said, what about no? And it starts escalating everything. He starts like every day getting rejected, with the theory that the more exposed you get, the more confident you get. And well, magical things happen on this book. It ended up with many nice things happening in his life, the life of his family, just by getting exposed to being uncomfortable very often. He has also a lot of videos on the internet. When he's doing all those things, he records them. And yeah, the simple path to wealth, you started with this book to learn a little bit of investing, and they propose a strategy that everybody can follow. And it's basically the stock is growing this 8% on average every year. They give some numbers and suggest also there is a behavioral part, such as avoid debt and basically work your ass very hard during your first years, invest everything, so you have the option to retire earlier, even if you don't want to do it, which I think the idea of going to a beach when you're 35 and do nothing is probably very sad, but at least you have the option. And this second book is a little bit more technical, but it's also amazing. Provides a lot of tips about investing and where to put the money, etc. Not only in stocks, also talks about bonds and real estate. And this book from here is from Jason Fried. You probably know this guy. He's the founder of Basecamp. He's, well, basically those guys created Ruby on Rails. So they are, they're good, and they've been working remotely for 20 plus years. Their company is fully remote. They have people in Spain, Denmark, all around the United States, and they give a lot of tips on how to work remotely. In fact, those guys have this problem as an American company. For them, it's hard to find non-Americans, and they also they deal a little bit with this topic in the book. So last but not least, well, no, that's it. Yeah, if you guys can leave me any feedback on this link, I would really appreciate it. It can be positive and negative. It needs to be constructive. I use it a lot to improve for future talks. And as in German we say a Dankeschön, as gratitude, I will send you a copy of my book. I published it a couple of years ago with 100 questions and answers to help you land your Android dream job or to find a candidate for your job. So yeah, I think that was pretty much everybody. If you guys have any question or something you want to talk about, thanks for being here. You've been a fantastic public.
Hey, that was a really good talk. That was really interesting.
Thanks, man.
You said you're kind of working with multiple clients at once. So I was just wondering, how do you manage that? But also, how do you negotiate with the client in terms of estimating? And is it you bill hourly or for a fixed price? Like, how does that work if you've got multiple things on the go?
I generally charge a daily price, and depends on the clients, and clients are happy. I have a German client that extends me the contracts every 6 months, and we sign from January to June, etc. With new ones, I found it works more in terms of sprints. They generally have a specification or a product they want to develop. We have a few talks, a few Skypes. They send me some documentation. I check it out. We talk with them, and they might have an estimation. They might tell me at the beginning, we need 2 months to do this, or we have budget for 2 months. And from them, there is always a negotiation. That's one of the points I mentioned, that you need to negotiate. Sometimes I think it's unrealistic when they ask. Sometimes I think it's maybe too little, too much. I think it's maybe a very rudimentary way, but we solve this by discussing a lot on an email thread. I start telling like, okay, I think this part might require more time or less. And in general, I think we reach agreements. Unless you are, if you're being honest and you're really trying to understand the problem, the companies also know that things take time. And with enough argumentation and discussion, I personally never had a problem of losing a client because they had like very stratospheric demands, or I had very stratospheric demands.
And when you're working, if you're working on multiple projects at once, how do you decide how do you divide your week up between those different clients?
Yeah, I have a Google Calendar that is well, I have several of them that I publish with my clients, and I generally agree on different days. I'm right now 3 days on one project, 2 days on another project, and Monday to Wednesday is with the first project, Thursday to Friday with the second project. And that might change. It's actually changing a lot, maybe every 2 months. But I do prefer that instead of having like half a day and then another half a day. I have found more comfortable in the situation when I can start working, work for a few hours for the same client on the same problem, and then just disconnect rather than making the switch every 2 or 3 hours.
Thank you. It's second, your great talk.
Thanks.
Do company usually do kind of technical interview with you, with contractor in general, or it's like, I'm an expert, I can, like, what's the situation? Can you elaborate on that?
Generally, I do not make that many interviews. Well, I have open source code published, a few books and a few articles. I think that helps a lot. I think also the more senior you are, because I came with references as well. So in a typical case, in Germany, for example, is you need, well, it's very common to have like references for your previous work and stuff. In Germany, some companies might have asked me a few times for the reference or for a short interview. With the American companies, actually never. So you have a very informal one, like what are you doing, which technology do you use, but never like a whiteboard or like sending any exercise for home.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the speech about politics. In time when you lose that sweet and warm place in company, you become alone for sure. And in time while you're alone, you for sure don't have any politics problem. But in time when you make an LTD, you hire people and politics come to you again. It doesn't solve, I suppose it's...
Well, I have had a few people in the past, but I'm 90% of my time working by myself. So I'm the LTD is a strategy for, it's less taxes and it's more comfortable because I can deduct more things. If you grow it obviously, you still have the politics because you become a manager. You're not anymore a sole developer. In my case, I intentionally keep it small. I don't think I could work with more than 2 people because then the time I spend managing is more than the time I spend programming. That's up to each person. Some people might be into politics and you can always expand the company and start hiring more people. I personally don't like that model. I think I'm a terrible manager and want to stay as a developer. So for me, the limit is I got up to 2 people for one project, but I feel comfortable working for myself. That's something that each person needs to decide based on their circumstances.
I see. I got. Thank you. It's a good choice. Yeah, for small companies for sure, but it limits growing. Anyway, about investment, you pointed us about investment. You invested like a private person or LTD, so you earned money and invest them, or it's private business.
I invest them as a private person, everything. I have my own stock dashboard in ING Direct in Germany. And every month I pour some amount of money. I have everything automated, so I buy always from the same stocks and from the same funds. A fund is basically an aggregation that replicates some index, like a fund that replicates Chinese companies or German companies. But it's everything by myself. I don't have a company or anything. And I have it automated. I think that's an advantage because I don't have to be checking every day if the stock is going up or down. It goes up, it goes down. Now it's going down, for example. But if you have this strategy, you should not be checking it every time because you would go crazy. Because suddenly some days you lose like 1,000 euros in 1 hour because the stock goes down, but then you recover them, and it's like.
Yeah, I know. Investment, it's for years, not for days. Yeah, for months.
Yeah, and well, in this strategy, the strategy I'm following particularly is trying to buy companies when they're very low. Blue chips, that means companies that have been there for 20 years and they're stable and they have barriers of entry, like constructing companies or energetic companies. You cannot start an energetic company tomorrow, right? and companies that give dividends. That's very important because they pay you 4 or 5% of the dividends every year. You reinvest this money, and then you're composing interest over the dividends. So the idea is that after 20 years or 15 years or 25 years, you have this on automatic mode. The companies are paying you dividends, you're living from the dividends, and you're not touching this money. That's one of the strategy. There is another people that have this buy and sell or.
Yeah, but since 2006 in Ukraine, it doesn't have investment market. It was caused by our previous ex-president, or should I say.
So you cannot invest.
Yeah, formally you may, but you will not get money, unfortunately. But well, thank you for an answer.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. You can, if you have any question or something, just feel free to grab me.